Here is the complete script, word for word, ready to record. You already know who this is about. You don't need to think about it. The name is already there, sitting somewhere in your chest, uninvited, quiet, certain. A face. A feeling you couldn't quite explain if someone asked you to, but one you recognize instantly, the way you recognize your own reflection. And this is not the first time. You've felt it this morning, maybe, before you said a single word to anyone. Or late at night, when the silence gets too heavy to ignore. Or in the middle of a conversation with someone else. And for just a fraction of a second, you weren't there anymore. You were somewhere else. You were with them. Perhaps it's someone you haven't spoken to in months. Perhaps it's someone you still see. But something between you has broken in a way that neither of you has found the words to name. What you know, what you feel in a place deeper than thought, is that this person hurt you. And if you're honest with yourself, truly honest, you know that somewhere in all of it, you hurt them too. And yet, they will not leave you. Not completely. Not the way people you've simply lost touch with leave you. This is different. This is a presence that lingers in rooms they've never entered. A weight that follows you into places they have never been. Tonight, I'm going to show you exactly why that is. And what I'm going to reveal will change the way you understand not just this connection, but something much deeper about who you are. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human soul who ever lived, spent decades mapping the hidden architecture of the psyche. He sat with thousands of people who carried exactly what you are carrying right now. People who could not explain why someone who brought them pain still occupied so much space inside them. People who felt, quietly and without knowing why, that forgetting was not simply a matter of time or willpower. And Jung had an answer. Not a comfortable one, but a true one. He called it projection. In one plain sentence. Projection is the unconscious process by which we place something that belongs to us, some unacknowledged feeling, some hidden part of ourselves, onto another person, and then experience it as though it is coming from them. This is the concept that will anchor everything you hear tonight. Not because it is a clever psychological idea, but because once you truly understand it, the connection you cannot shake, the person you cannot forget, will finally begin to make sense in a way it never has before. Jung observed that the people who mark us most deeply are rarely the ones who simply made us happy. They are the ones who activated something inside us that was already there, waiting. Something that had never been seen. Something that had never been named. What you are experiencing right now is not a personal failure. It is not weakness. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is one of the most documented patterns in the entire history of depth psychology. The people who wound us most severely are almost always the ones who touched something real. Something that mattered. Something we did not know we were carrying. You are not broken. You are in the middle of a psychological event that Jung would have recognized immediately and taken very seriously. The wound between you and this person was not random. It was not bad luck. It was not simply bad timing or incompatibility. Jung observed that the deepest relational pain almost always arrives through the people who carry something we need to see in ourselves. They did not create the wound. They revealed it. And that is why they are so impossible to simply put down. Think about it for a moment. The people you have lost who left no lasting mark. You remember them perhaps, but they don't live inside you. They don't follow you. The people who remain, who refuse to dissolve, these are the ones who activated something at a level far beneath ordinary experience. Jung would say, they touched the unconscious. And the unconscious does not let go easily. But here is what most people never look at. Here is the layer beneath the layer. The pain you felt, the pain you perhaps still feel, did not originate entirely from what they did. Some of it did, yes. Their actions were real. Their words were real. What happened between you was real. I am not here to minimize any of that, but Jung would ask you to consider something else. He would ask, what did this person activate inside you that was already there before they arrived? What did they reflect back at you that you had never been able to see directly? Because the unconscious works through other people, it cannot speak to us directly most of the time. It cannot walk up to us and say, here is the part of yourself you have been avoiding. Here is the feeling you buried so long ago you forgot it was buried. So instead, it arranges for someone to appear in our lives who embodies exactly that thing. And we are drawn to them, powerfully, inexplicably, often against our better judgment, because something in us recognizes what they are carrying. This is the hidden mechanism. The other person is not the cause of your pain. They are the occasion for it. They are the surface on which something inside you finally became visible. And this is why the connection is so hard to break. Because breaking it feels, on some unconscious level, like losing access to the very part of yourself they revealed. The pain is tangled up with the revelation. The wound is tangled up with the awakening. And the psyche, Jung would tell you, does not easily abandon an awakening. What did this person show you about yourself that you have never been able to see clearly without them? That is the question that matters most tonight. And you may not be able to answer it fully yet, but something in you is already reaching toward it. And somewhere in you, you already know this. Not consciously. Not in the part of you that makes lists and plans and tries to be reasonable about everything. But something deeper in you, something that has been watching all of this unfold, already knows that this was never simply about them. You felt it, didn't you? In some quiet moment when you stopped trying to understand it and just let yourself feel the weight of it. You sensed that this was larger than two people making each other miserable. You sensed that something was happening inside you that was asking to be seen. That recognition is not nothing. That recognition is everything. Now I want to name something to you directly. Something that sounds, on the surface, like a contradiction. But Jung would tell you it is one of the most reliable truths in all of human psychology. The two people who have hurt each other the most are always the hardest to forget. Read that again. Sit with it for a moment. Not the people who loved each other most tenderly, not the people who were most compatible, the people who wounded each other most deeply. Those are the ones who remain. Those are the ones who do not dissolve with time the way other losses do. And this seems wrong, doesn't it? Our instinct says, pain should drive people apart. Hurt should create distance. If someone causes you suffering, the mind should protect you by releasing them, by erasing them, by moving on. But Jung would say, the mind does not work that way. The unconscious does not organize itself around comfort. It organizes itself around meaning. And when two people have hurt each other at depth, when the wounds went all the way down to something real, the psyche registers that as significant, as unfinished, as carrying something that has not yet been understood. The intensity of what you cannot forget is directly proportional to how much psychological material was activated between you. The more real the collision, the more deeply your respective unconscious material was stirred, the more impossible it becomes to simply walk away and feel nothing. This is not sentimentality. This is not romantic delusion. This is the psyche doing exactly what Jung said it always does, holding on to what it has not yet fully metabolized. Holding on to the parts of the experience that still contain something you need to integrate. The wound between you is still speaking. That is why you cannot stop hearing it. And this process, this impossibility of forgetting, moves through recognizable phases. You may have lived through all of them already, or you may be inside one of them right now, without knowing its name. The first phase is what I would call the initial rupture. This is the moment, or the series of moments, when something between you broke. Perhaps there was a single event, Perhaps it was a slow accumulation of smaller breaks, until one day you looked at each other and found that the distance had become unbridgeable. But in this phase, the pain is still fresh enough to feel like information. You are still close enough to the wound to feel its edges. And there is something almost clarifying about it, even in the midst of the suffering. Because at least you understand, in this phase, that what happened was real. The rupture feels like an ending. But Jung would say, it is also a beginning. The break in the surface is the moment the unconscious material begins to rise. The second phase is the silence that speaks. This is where most people live for longer than they expect. The other person is no longer present in your daily life, or they are present in a way that feels worse than absence, and yet they are everywhere. You hear a song, you pass a place, you see a particular quality of light on an afternoon, and something in you simply stops. And the silence is not empty. That is what is so disorienting about this phase. The silence is full. Full of everything that was never said. Full of everything that was said and could not be taken back. Full of questions that have no audience now. In this phase, the mind begins its attempt to make sense of what happened, and it cannot quite do it. Because the parts that matter most are not in the conscious mind, they are below it. The third phase is the story you keep rewriting. You have been here. You know this one. You go over it again and again. You rearrange the sequence of events. You find the moment where it could have gone differently. You rehearse the conversation you never had, or you replay the conversation you did have, changing your words, changing theirs, finding the version of events that makes the most sense. Jung would say, this is not obsession. Or rather, it is not simply obsession. It is the psyche attempting to integrate an experience that contains more psychological material than the conscious mind has yet been able to process. The rewriting is an attempt to find the meaning. The problem is that you are looking for the meaning in the wrong place. You are looking for it in the events. But the meaning is not in what happened. The meaning is in what was revealed. The fourth phase is the unexpected opening. This one arrives quietly, and not everyone reaches it quickly. But at some point, after the rupture, after the silence, after the endless rewriting, something shifts. A conversation you weren't expecting, a dream that leaves a residue you can't quite shake. A moment of stillness in which, instead of the familiar wave of pain, something slightly different arrives. Something that feels almost like understanding. Not forgiveness, necessarily. Not resolution. Not the ability to say it was fine, because it was not fine. But something that begins to feel like, I see what this was. I see what it was asking of me. I see what I was unable to see before. Jung would call this the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming more fully yourself through exactly this kind of confrontation with your own unconscious material. And it always begins with pain. Not in spite of pain, through it. The fifth phase is the quiet integration. This is not the end of the feeling. I want to be honest with you about that. The person does not disappear. What you shared does not stop having been real, but something changes in the quality of how they live inside you. They stop being an open wound and begin to become, slowly, not all at once, a part of your story that you carry with more understanding than suffering. You begin to hold it differently, not because time erased it, but because you did the work of seeing what it was actually showing you about yourself. And in doing that work, something in you became larger, more whole, more genuinely your own. But here is what Jung would add. And this is the part most people skip. This is the part that is most uncomfortable to hear, and the most necessary. Everything I have described so far, the pattern, the projection, the phases, the impossibility of forgetting, all of it has been focused in some way on the other person. on understanding them, on understanding what happened between you, on making sense of the connection. And that is important work. But Jung would turn the lens now, directly at you, because the real question is not, why can't I forget them? The real question is, what is the part of myself that I first encountered through this person? And what am I going to do with it now that they are no longer here to carry it for me? When someone activates our unconscious material, when they carry our projection, they become, in a very real sense, a mirror. And while we are with them, we can see that part of ourselves in them without having to acknowledge that it belongs to us. The passion, the anger, the longing, the fear, the parts we admire and the parts we despise, they seem to be in the other person. They seem to be about the other person. But Jung would say, they were always about you. They were always yours. And when the person leaves, when the mirror is taken away, you are left with all of that material and nowhere to project it. It comes home. It becomes yours to carry consciously. And that is the real work of this loss. That is the real invitation inside the wound. What did you love in them that you have not yet allowed yourself to be? What did they do that infuriated you? And where does that exact quality live? Unnamed, somewhere inside yourself. What did you give to them? The attention, the depth, the devotion, the anger that you might now learn to give to your own becoming. The shadow work, Jung would say, is not about the other person at all. It never was. The other person was the occasion. You are the material. And the question that this experience is asking you, quietly, persistently, in that way that will not fully stop until you answer it, is this: who are you becoming on the other side of this? Not who were you before them, not who you were with them. Who are you becoming now, because of what they showed you, and what you are now brave enough to look at directly? That is the transformation this experience is asking for, and no one else can do it for you. Not them, not time, only you, choosing to look. So let me leave you here, in this quiet. The pain you have carried, the weight of this person, this connection, this impossible combination of wound and longing, is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something real happened, that something in you was genuinely activated, that you are a person capable of depth, of being touched all the way down, of forming bonds that the psyche takes seriously. That is not a flaw. That is not something to be managed or medicated or simply moved past as efficiently as possible. That is the raw material of becoming. The person you cannot forget was not in your life by accident. Jung would tell you that. The unconscious does not arrange accidents. What passed between you, however painful, however unresolved, was asking you to see something that you could not have seen any other way, and you are still here, still feeling, still willing to understand. That matters more than you know. You will not leave this the same way you arrived. Something in you is already different for having sat with this tonight. Something is already, quietly, beginning to shift. You are not the wound. You are the one who survives it, and in surviving it, becomes more wholly themselves. Ce n'est pas un hasard que tu sois ici ce soir. Your soul already knew it needed this. Before you go, I want to ask you one thing, just one. Tell me in the comments. Is there someone you carry right now, someone who hurt you, someone you may have hurt, someone you simply cannot forget, no matter how much time passes? You don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. One word is enough. One word that names what you're holding. I read every single one. If this touched something real in you tonight, share it with someone who is quietly carrying something too. They may not be able to say what they need, but something in them will recognize this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that now. Every week we go this deep, Every week we take Jung's understanding of the soul and bring it into the exact experiences you are living right now. Take care of yourself tonight. You deserve that much, at least. Sonnet 4. Sixth Sawal.